Hello and a very warm welcome to Daily Dispatch, a show that gives you all the latest news and updates from the digital ecosystem. I'm Priya Sheth. Thank you very much for logging in today. Time now to get you all the top news stories that we've been tracking for you this evening. Well, first up, private equity firm Chris Capital has invested about $50 million for a minority stake in agrochemicals company Safex Chemicals. Now, this transaction involves a combination of a secondary sale by an existing private equity investor, Banyan Tree Growth Capital, along with a primary raise by the company for growth initiatives. Well, moving on to the second headline of the day, fantasy sports unicorn startup Dream Sports, which owns the flagship brand Dream 11, has raised about $400 million in a second investment led by TCV, T1 Capital Partners, as well as Falcon Edge. Now, reports suggest that this round, which saw participation from existing investors, valued Dream Sports at about $5 billion. Well, Bengaluru-based telemedicine giant Practo has launched veterinary telemedicine services on its platform. As a part of these services, the company is partnering with licensed vets across India and will be offering 24/7 online consultation services for pets. Well, moving on to the final headline of today, Sequoia Capital India has closed a $195 million second seed fund as part of its Surge program, which backs seed and early stage startups through funding as well as mentorship. Now, launched in 2019, Surge invests in pre-series A startups in India as well as Southeast Asia and had kicked off with a corpus of $200 million. Well, moving on to our second segment, I have with me someone who has created an ESOP policy, something that is going to ease out, the whole process of ESOPs in the startup ecosystem. I have with me Varun Khaitan from UrbanCompany and Mr. Sanjay Jha from MyStartupEquity. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us today on the Daily Dispatch. I want to begin by asking you, Mr. Khaitan, about the whole ESOP policy and the fact that you all have collaborated with MyStartupEquity to really come ahead with a startup framework, ESOP framework.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. Um, you know, startups are probably the most challenging and complex human endeavor that we are taking up today. Really thinking about what the future of the world is going to be and challenging status quo to be able to create that is quite hard, and that's why we believe in this journey, having everybody to be an owner and truly a part of the mission increases the odds of success and helps everyone benefit from it. That's why at UC we've had a very employee first ESOP policy, and we've also given a large number of ESOPs to a large number of employees, along with creating secondary sale opportunities along the way. Um, in the last 6 years of doing this, both building the company and seeing everyone in UC benefit from ESOPs, we realized that this is not as prevalent of a culture in the rest of the Indian startup ecosystem. In fact, we've seen other founders and employees both grapple with the complexity and at times take decisions which are not so good for the long run. So that's why to help the entire ecosystem and create more dialogue, we found it to be a great opportunity when Let's Venture and My Startup Equity also came up and wanted us to put out something jointly which will really both educate and state what is best in class.
Mr. Jha, I want to come to you at this point in time. You've created this ESOP framework. Of course, as Mr. Khaitan was mentioning, that it is a tedious process. It is challenging for startups to grapple with. So, in terms of this policy, what is going to make it easier for startups? If you could just identify what the key features of this ESOP framework is.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Priya. Yes, like Varun was saying, let me reiterate the facts that startups are a high risk, high reward journey, and at early stages, the founder needs to hire good talent, attract, reward, and retain good talent. And in that process, early stages, when he has little cash in the company, ESOP becomes the most powerful tool he can use, in terms of getting good talent. It helps them conserve cash. It helps them align the new employees or new hires, and get them aligned with the passion, with the kind of journey, a hard journey that the startups are, and that becomes the most important thing. But then what are the challenges with respect to ESOP adoption, and how our open source policy in partnership with UrbanCompany makes it easier, right? So I'll get into that. So of course, at early stages, the company, if it wants to roll out ESOP, they need to spend, they need to approach a legal firm and get the ESOP plan document in place, and that costs them 50,000, 1 lakh rupees, or sometimes even more, right? So having a free to download open source policy comes in very, very handy. The companies can just use it and modify it as per the requirement and be able to roll out very quickly. Second, but not the least important part, is how easy for everybody to understand the ESOP policy. There are various legal clauses in the ESOP document that both the founders and employees find very hard to understand, right? Because the legal language can be terse, right? So that is why we have made it very, very simple. We spend hundreds of hours and put in all our knowledge that we had got working with hundreds of startups at MyStartupEquity to fruition, and we made it very simple for everybody to understand the terms and conditions on the ESOP policy. And I would also like to add that we have ingrained all the good parts of the policy that UrbanCompany has in its ESOP plan, and ingrain that into the document as well. So all these things are going to benefit as part of this open source document for our young founders.
UrbanCompany at this point in time has given out about 8 million worth of ESOPs to employees at various stages. I believe that there have been three points where you all have done this whole ESOPs for employees. So along this process, what according to you have been the key learnings, Mr. Khaitan? If you could just elaborate on what perhaps are the key learnings that you've realized after going through 3 rounds of this kind of secondary sale.
Yeah, the total ESOP that people have at today's valuation would be much higher. 7 million is just the value of the secondary cash that folks have already realized. So our learnings, overall, actually quite simple. As I was saying earlier, having a good ESOP program is really, I would say, pivotal to making startups successful. So our first learning was to actually give more and give more often. The more you share, the more the pie, the value of ESOPs and the value of the entire shareholding of the company grows. So we started with a 10% ESOP pool, but over time we have actually added to it 5 times, so that the pool is always large and we can give to both current as well as new joining employees. We've given ESOPs in our lifetime so far to close to 800 employees at UrbanCompany, and we want to just keep growing this going forward. So I think that's been one key learning. Give more and give more often. This is not a zero-sum game. The more you share, the more it really grows. Second, we've kept the terms to be very, very employee first. Everything from vesting schedule to strike price to exercise period. We can get into these details, but that's really the idea of the open source policy as well. What are these factors that really make or break a good ESOP program? And we've kept all of these things best in class. The third learning along the way has been that people still are yet to fully understand in a young startup ecosystem that this is real money, and that's where we have created avenues for secondary sale now 3 times, so that people can along the building journey see cash as well. So I think all these three put together really make ESOPs very real, very valuable, get top talent to come and, take the risk, understand the reward, and hence take the risk, and really feel and be an owner.
I want to ask one question to the both of you. One is, of course, on the fact that, did you consult with any regulators, before coming out with a policy document? And is it perhaps something that startup can go with, on a legal basis? And I think that's one question that most startups will have, is that, is this document valid legally? So, Mr. Jha, if you could come in first on this.
Yes, of course, Priya. We did have our legal partner write this document and review it and vet it, along with UrbanCompany legal folks as well. So it is perfectly, fully legally vetted document, no doubts about it. Of course, there is a legal disclaimer we have put on our website saying that employees or other startups are supposed to use it at their own risk. I mean, of course, we will not take any claims for it, but it is a fully legal vetted document that they can use, and they can modify this as per their requirements as well.
Mr. Khaitan, any conversation with regulators on, collaborating with the regulators as well on a very sensitive policy like this?
I think regulation is not really the challenge here, right? ESOPs legally and financially have been an instrument that's been around for quite some time. You might have slightly different terminology for a public company versus a private company, but I think regulation has not been the barrier here. The barrier really has been the intent of the founders and management team, and understanding of the overall ecosystem, that if this policy is friendly and more people share and participate in wealth creation, how much better can it be for companies? So that's why I think, regulatory wise, this is simple, and it's always been simple.
Yeah, just sorry, Priya. Just like to add to what Varun said. Yes, there is no regulatory issue here. I mean, ESOPs have been in place, and it's as per the SEBI regulations that is out there. And it is a simple policy and plan, and the terms specified in it are purely governed by each of the company and the decisions that they make towards benefit of their employees. So it's a document that encompasses all the policies and clauses and terms that the company decides to go give it to its employees. So it's a document between the company and the employees. There is no regulatory hurdle as such in this case.
Mr. Khaitan, you've gone through this ESOP program over the last couple of years, and I wanted you to give some advice to startups out there listening to us in terms of what mistakes they should avoid when they go about beginning an ESOPs program or launching such an ESOPs program for employees. So something that you've learned along your way, some mistakes that they should avoid.
Sure. So I'll talk about the 5 things that really matter, and share my views. Firstly, is the size of the ESOP pool itself. Keep the ESOP pool sizable, and as you go along in the building journey, as the pool gets spent, generously add to it. Along the way, if you have to add 1 or 2% into the ESOP pool even every year, don't shy away from it, because it's going to multiply. Just simple math, if you dilute by 2% but the value doubles, the dilution is so much worth it. So this is really pure capitalism, and the more you share, the more it grows. Second criteria: keep the vesting schedule simple. Don't keep it back-ended as a tool for retention. Employees will stay if the company is great, if the mission is purposeful, and not because more of the ESOPs are going to vest later. Then there is the thing around strike price and exercise period. Keep the strike price at face value as low as possible, and keep the exercise period as long as possible, ideally indefinite. And both of these are important, so that employees who leave, who have actually earned their ESOPs by contributing to the company do see value later. Shortchanging employees who have left is really bad in the long run for your company and for the um, ecosystem at large. So yeah, these would be some of my guidance. I think just keep things simple and really encourage the whole spirit of co-ownership.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today and giving us some key learnings and guidance on the ESOP framework for startups. Thank you very much for being a part of Daily Dispatch. Well, time to say goodbye. Many thanks for joining us on this edition of the Daily Dispatch. I'll see you tomorrow at 5 p.m. Goodbye and stay safe.